Why do you care for me when we all fall asleep? Where do we go?
All right, hi everyone. My name is Rebecca Roberts, and I'm going to be doing this final presentation on the death themes found throughout Billie Eilish's album, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? So, I've been a huge Billie Eilish fan for a long time, and this album was pretty different from the stuff she's released in the past. So, I thought it'd be really interesting to look into the analysis of why she would change her style so drastically and kind of what that means for us as a consumer as we follow along Billie and her progression throughout her musical career. So, Billie was inspired to write this after a dear friend of hers passed away. So, her emotion and meaning in the entire album is rich with potential analysis and understanding as we kind of experience what she experienced and understand what she had to go through when she dealt with this. So the having her friend pass away led to Billie considering a lot about death and particularly the afterlife. So the album title, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, really represents the idea of when we all fall asleep forever, when we die, where do we go? What happens? You know, as she deals with the grief and the loss and with of this friend and wondering where they went, what they're doing, are they okay, am I going to ever see them again, all of those emotions and the grief that she goes through are really powerful and impactful throughout the entire album. And you can listen, as you listen to this album, you can tell her process of dealing and accepting the death of a friend and finding peace in it goes along with the progression of the songs in the album, you know? And so it's really fascinating to listen to, kind of heart-wrenching, but full of so much hidden meaning and semiotics that I thought it would be a perfect medium to research and conduct analysis on. So, my methodology for this was I decided to code this analysis in a basic system using 3 key factors. Is the song valid for this particular analysis? Does the song discuss death? And is the content dark? I decided to add the last category because while some of the songs don't necessarily discuss death, they are dark and could fit into some of the analysis as a result. The method I used for collecting my data was listening to the songs, reading lyrics, and then researching the songs on the internet to see all the potential understandings out there so I could utilize all of this information as I conduct my own analysis. So this is the layout of my coding. So I was mainly looking at how we could narrow down a few of the songs so that I could have, because there are, I think, 12 or 13 songs in this album, so quite a bit, and I wanted to narrow it down a little bit more so I could dive in a little deeper on those songs. So I looked at the ones that have strong death themes as my focus. I did look at the dark content idea, but as you can see, there's only 2 songs that even don't have any dark content, so I decided to just pass over those. And I didn't really use the dark content throughout the rest of the analysis, but it did help me originally when I was planning and deciding what I was going to focus on. So the key is that 0 is no, it does not contain that thing, and 1 is yes, it does. So as you can see, there's quite a few that don't discuss death, but there's quite a few also that do. It's almost 50-50, a little bit more that discuss death. So it was really fascinating to look into and helped me narrow down what I was going to focus on. So the results were that all of the songs in the album contain dark themes, but only about 7 of the 12 songs in the album discuss death in particular. So some focus more heavily on death and some on afterlife of those 7 songs. but I really focused on those as I continued with this analysis. So the progression of the album goes through the steps of wondering what happens when we die, to the final sad conclusion of actually dying yourself. The emotions throughout the progression of the album from start to finish are really, reminders of someone going through the 5 stages of grief and loss. So those 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. They don't always have to go in that order. Some people grieve in different ways. So you might first be bargaining and then anger and then denial and depression. It just depends on the person. But a lot of times it follows this route and it always ends in that acceptance, hopefully, if you go through the whole thing. And I found that off of Psych Central, the website. So the results continued. So Billie goes through the grief process differently in this album than it is typically written. Although according to Psych Central, like I said, different people go through the stages of grief differently. So I created this line graph kind of showing how she progresses through the album in these stages of grief. So these are the order of the songs that contain death themes in the album and kind of the order of what they represent in the stages of grief. So as you can see on the side, we have the stage of grief, 1 through 5, and then at the bottom we have the song name. So we can see that in Zanny, Billie starts with depression. Then with You Should See Me in a Crown, she moves to anger. All the Good Girls Go to Hell is bargaining. Bury a Friend, it's back at that anger again. ILO, MILO. Not 100% sure if that's how you say it. It's how I say it. It's actually my favorite song in the album, but it shows the denial as she's kind of like trying to go back to how she was before and trying to, deny that she's happy to go through this experience. Until in the last 2 songs, with Listen Before I Go and Goodbye, she's accepting. The tone shifts a lot to soft, accepting, almost calm, although it is also sad because it's her saying goodbye to her friend, to herself, kind of, to the concept of denying that death is inevitable. So as Billie mourns her friend and wonders about the afterlife, she's going through a myriad of emotions that you can feel and experience as you listen to the songs within this album. So going into the theoretical application of this and the results, I thought this album lines up perfectly with the theory of mood management. And this theory argues that the media we contain affects our emotions and moods, and that we often choose media that will get us to the emotion or mood we want to feel in that moment. So when I'm feeling more sad or down, listening to this album keeps me feeling sad, but also gives me peace, and with that sadness, peace with that sadness. So it may seem like a weird desire, but sometimes getting out of a sad place requires listening to sad music in steps. And this album brings a peace with the sadness as it goes along that progression of the 5 stages of grief. And so when she hits that accepting moment in the last few songs, it helps me to slowly accept getting out of that sad mood. So it's really interesting to me in this aspect. And then 2 parts of theory of mood management that I thought really went well with this album also is absorption potential and hedonic valence. So absorption potential argues that media messages that are high absorption are more likely to intervene and distract listeners from negative moods, and low absorption are less likely. So if you want to change your mood, you want to listen to more high absorption media. So this album tends to be more low absorption media for most people who just listen to the tone of the songs, as they are more sad and morose. But if you listen and pay attention to the lyrics of the song and see the changes in moods throughout the album, it can be high absorption material as you overcome your grief or your sadness along with Billie. So, and then hedonic valence argues that positive or negative tones of the media can affect if you stay in a good or bad mood. So it's similar to absorption potential, but instead of distracting, it's just focusing on just the tones and if it's negative or positive, because negative tones are less effective in changing moods or retaining positive emotions. So this album is also, very representative of hedonic valence for the same reason as the absorption potential, but the overall negative tone of most of the songs in the album hold more sway in keeping a negative state of mind. So typically, this isn't the kind of album you're going to want to listen to if you want to be happier. However, if you focus again on the tone of the lyrics as opposed to the tone of the music, the album does grow more positive and you could get into a better mood as a result towards the end with those last few songs. So it's really interesting that if you listen to the lyrics or if you listen to the tone of the music, vastly different effects on you and emotions that it elicits. So, in conclusion, Billie Eilish is a masterful musician, especially for such a young age. I'm also a musician, and the fact that she can carry such strong emotions in her songs, and especially in this heart-wrenching album where you really feel her grief as a listener, and everything, you put yourself right in her shoes. It's so impressive and beautiful to listen to. And I really think it's so incredible. So this album has been one of my favorites ever since it came out a year ago. And the powerful effect this has on the listener as they go through the depression and denial of death and the questions it brings up regarding the afterlife is just amazing. The album, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, may not answer that question directly, but it guides the listener on a journey of beginning to pursue that truth, the concept of accepting death and wondering about the afterlife. It's an emotional journey for sure, but it is powerful and stays with the listener long after the song ends.